Do you think a manager should give you instructions and incentives? Or would you prefer more freedom to make your own decisions? Now, one of these approaches might feel more attractive or even more modern to you at first hearing, but in fact you might benefit from different management styles at different times and different stages of your career. And when you become a manager, your assumptions will have an influence on the way that you manage people. The way that you assess people's needs and wants will have this influence. And therefore it's really important for you to examine these assumptions so that when you do become a manager, that you can adapt your own management styles and get much better results. Now, in this video on performance management, we looked at the effect of a process on employee motivation. And in this video, we're going to look at management style and the effect of management style on employee motivation. And at the same time, we'll give you all the concepts and all the vocabulary that you need in order to be able to discuss management style from the point of view of theory X and theory Y. So both theory X and theory Y, they come from the perception or the beliefs that managers have about employees. Well, theory X has some basic assumptions, and the first assumption is that people really don't like work. The phrase is they inherently dislike work, or they find work distasteful. So inherently means it's more or less permanent by its very nature, and distasteful means it's really unpleasant or it's disagreeable. So because most people dislike work, and that's from its very nature, they will try to avoid work wherever possible. Most people are not really ambitious. They want job security. They need to be supervised and they need constant direction. People are very resistant to change. They have to be forced to achieving their objectives. Most people, they don't enjoy work, they're lazy, and they'll only get down to work when there's a deadline involved. And most people come to work because they just want to earn a living. So when you think about these basic assumptions that a manager may have about the way that people work and the way that they view work, then this results in a certain management style. And if you think about all of these concepts with theory X, then there are certain things we can say about the management style that would arise from a manager adopting theory X. The style would be very controlling, and there would be a lot of close supervision of the works being done. This would involve what we call micromanagement, and also a lot of hands-on management. And hands-on means there is direct involvement or intervention from the management. There's a lot of carrot and stick motivational approach. And this is all about reward and punishment. The reward is represented by the carrot and punishment is represented by the stick. Carrot and stick is really, it's persuading people, and you persuade people to do certain things by offering rewards and threatening punishment. Other words that we could use about theory X is it's very demanding. Managers are very demanding. It's very authoritative. In some ways, some people might think it's very old-fashioned, and it's certainly non-participative. The other thing that we'll get with theory X is what I would call a lot of one-way communication. And one-way communication is what we looked at the very beginning. So the manager gives a lot of direct instructions to employees, usually using some kind of hierarchy, and doesn't get involved in any kind of dialogue. Theory Y is very different. So let's look at some of the common beliefs that managers would have when they adopt a theory Y approach. Now, people come to work because they want to. They enjoy work. They get a lot of self-satisfaction from work and a lot of self-fulfillment from work. People will naturally accept responsibility, and they'll take a lot of pride in the work that they do. The people are autonomous, they're self-directed, and they can be trusted to fulfill objectives and to get on with the job. People will put in a lot of effort. They will try to solve problems creatively. If you have expectations of them, people mostly will exceed those expectations. And most people have some kind of desire to achieve. So what's the management style that arises from adopting theory Y? Unlike theory X, which is non-participative, theory Y is participative. There's lots and lots of open two-way communication. And two-way communication means that managers are talking to employees and employees are talking to managers, and there's some kind of dialogue going on, and there's lots of careful listening and speaking going on. There's lots of encouragement going on. The managers encourage initiative, development, involvement in decision making. They delegate activities and they support activities. People have a lot of autonomy and they're allowed to get on with the job. And there's lots of creative thinking and innovative problem solving. And there's trust and belief in people's talent and motivation. And the opposite to hands-on with theory X, with theory Y, we get the idea of hands-off, where managers feel that they don't need to directly involve themselves in everything that's going on. Well, theory X, as we looked at, it has these controlling practices, and these controlling practices can result in low productivity and motivation. In some cases, there may even be resistance or even disruptive behavior as a result of theory X. People might, for example, they might come to work late all of the time, or they might be very absent. They might be absent for long periods of time. Theory X can also stop learning and development. Now, people would generally accept that theory Y can be much more motivational because people have the opportunity to fulfill their own potential. The success of theory X or theory Y, or the use of theory X or theory Y, can depend on different factors. So the first factor would depend on the size of the organization. If you've got a large global company with many subsidiaries, and the power is very centralized in the headquarters and there's a very strong hierarchy, because of this organization of the company, there might be much more tendency to theory X. And then it can be also dependent on the kind of business that you're involved in. If you've got a large manufacturing company, then theory X might be desirable in some cases because, for example, you might have issues with health and safety. Whereas if you had a very small creative company of some kind, involved in some kind of creative industry, and you had around about 30 people with it, then theory Y might be much more applicable. And when you look at this, then this is also to do with the needs of the organization. If you've got this manufacturing company, then the manufacturing company will probably need to achieve production targets of some kind. And again, there might be some need to use theory X. But if you're trying to come up with creative solutions and innovative ideas, then theory Y might be more applicable. It can also depend on culture, and this can be culture that's either corporate culture or the country culture. It can depend on the demands of the workplace and the expectations of talent. If we think about modern applications, things like digital applications, or the tendency now to work much more from home, or sometimes this is called remote working, then adopting a theory Y approach might again be much more successful or even applicable in this situation, because people are just working out on their own more. And then you have to also think about the level of experience or the knowledge that a worker has. There's a big difference, for example, between somebody who's just starting a job for the first time and is starting in the company. That person would probably need or even want a lot of guidance in the job, maybe much more of an approach that's theory X. But then again, if you've got a middle manager and the middle manager's been doing the job very competently for a period of 20 years, then that person might respond much better to a theory Y approach. Another thing can be situations change. There can, for example, there's a thing called a corporate crisis. For example, if you're in the manufacturing company and there is an enormous explosion in the company and the crisis has to be dealt with in the best way possible, and your company is usually dealing with using theory Y, there might be a situation here with the crisis where theory X has to be adopted. So maybe we should talk about where theory X and theory Y comes from. Well, there was this guy in 1960, and he wrote the book The Human Side of Enterprise, and he outlined the theory X and the theory Y management styles in this book. But what does this all mean for you? Well, McGregor himself, his findings were much more in favour of theory Y. And as you've gone through these descriptions and you've thought about theory X and you've thought about theory Y, it could be that you find Y much more attractive. But as I said before, it's probably not all black and white, and a lot of this has to do with motivation and the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So let's have a look at extrinsic motivation. What is extrinsic motivation? Well, extrinsic motivation is when you're motivated to perform a task or you engage in a behaviour and because you want to get a reward or you want to avoid a punishment. And again, if we hear the words again, reward and punishment, this immediately reminds us of theory X. Extrinsic motivation, it more or less comes from the outside. You engage not because you're enjoying the activity or because you find the activity satisfying in itself. You're engaging in the activity because you want to get something pleasant, a reward, and you want to avoid something unpleasant, some kind of punishment. Now, theory Y, on the other hand, kicks in much more to intrinsic motivation. We should discuss what is intrinsic motivation. Well, intrinsic motivation is when you engage in an activity because you find the activity itself rewarding. You're performing the task because you're engaged in the task. You're doing the task because the task has its own reward and you're not getting any kind of reward from the outside. So let's take the example of doing an exam. Now, if you've got an exam and the exam is coming up next month, there is some kind of reward and there's some kind of punishment connected with this. If you study hard and you pass the exam and you get a good result, this is kind of some reward. And if you fail the exam and you have to do the exam again, this is some kind of punishment. Now this is you're studying for the reward or or to avoid the punishment, and this is some kind of extrinsic motivation. Now it could be that as you're studying, you begin to find yourself getting interested in one topic, and you find yourself going deeper and deeper into the topic and doing more research on the topic, and you get into a kind of flow and you forget studying. And you just get involved in the activity, and you're doing the activity because you're enjoying it and because the activity itself has some kind of reward. And this is intrinsic motivation. And there's nothing wrong with either of these, with extrinsic or intrinsic. We both need extrinsic or intrinsic motivation at different times, in different circumstances. And both of them can achieve objectives. And the other thing is that levels of these different kinds of motivation, they're fluctuating all the time and they're changing from day to day. And again, if we come back to theory X and theory Y, my feeling is it would be a mistake to think that some people are always theory X or always theory Y. As you know, if you examine your own performance, sometimes your motivation is at a low level and you need extrinsic motivation, and sometimes you have very high levels of intrinsic motivation. And this will be just the same for you in your work life. Some tasks you'll find It's very much based on extrinsic motivation, theory X, and sometimes it's much more based on intrinsic motivation, theory Y. So in my opinion, I think it would be a very big mistake to manage people or even to teach people entirely from the point of view of theory X or theory Y. All the time you need to examine the situation, all these different factors that we've looked at, and adopt a theory according to what's happening and what you see happening around you. Just adapt your style when it's necessary. Now, it's also worth mentioning that McGregor was working on Theory Z towards the end of his life, and it was redefined in this book in 1981. So this is 20 years after the publication of McGregor's original work on Theory X and Theory Y. So that was it for this video. It was all about Theory X and Theory Y, McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y. It was all about management style and talking about management style and discussing management style, and in the long term thinking about your own management style. I'd like to thank you for listening to this video, and I'll see you in the next one.